He had also sensed that supreme power, but it did not make him feel respect. Instead, it made him feel hatred. The primogenitor had created the golden age of humanity, but he had brought about the darkest era of enslavement for these astral beasts. They would definitely get their revenge. Within the main hall, the first person whose stellar source had been completely absorbed by the statue was Heluo Mavis. She had the least amount of stellar source in her body, which was not surprising, as the Mavis family did not specialize in stellar source cultivation. During the above heaven sect era, the primogenitor had encouraged humanity to create their own powers, which had led to the emergence of death energy, fate energy, Mavis, and other powers. The next person whose stellar source had been absorbed was Chu Yuan, as he specialized in stellar source cultivation. After all, he had been received by the primogenitor before, and he wanted to use stellar source energy as a starting point to create another power that could rival the Three Realms' 6 Daos. However, he would have to wait until he was at least a half-ancestor before he could create other powers, and so far he had only been cultivating stellar source. In terms of the amount of stellar source he possessed, he believed that he was not inferior to any of the other Dao children. Among the Dao children of the 6 continents, the one with the most stellar source was the Lu family's Dao child. Whether it was star energy or stellar source, the Lu family's consumption and absorption of stellar source far exceeded that of ordinary cultivators. However, Chu Yuan was confident that he could compete with the Lu family's Dao child. During that era he had indeed competed with Lu Qianni, and the two of them had roughly the same amount of stellar source. Chu Yuan had originally thought that with his second tribulation origin stage cultivation, the amount of stellar source he possessed would surpass Lu Yin's. Even if Lu Yin was powerful enough to fight against a Dao child, there was still a gap of a minor realm between them. Lu Yin should not be able to defeat Lu Qianni, which meant that Lu Yin would not be able to defeat Chu Yuan. However, while Lu Yin's stellar source was still being absorbed, Chu Yuan's had already finished. Chu Yuan and Heluo Mavis looked at Lu Yin in astonishment. This person had a lot of stellar source in his body? As expected of someone from the Lu family. Lu Yin's expression turned ugly as this was troublesome. His first stellar source cyclone was about to dry up. Once he ran out of stellar source, how would he be able to increase his cultivation in the future? Hold on, he looked at his cosmic ring. Mount Supreme still had 5 sons, and the amount of stellar source within should be close to that of a half-ancestor. He had enough stellar source to recover, but it would be difficult for him to break through. Fortunately, he had condensed the 5 sons beforehand, which meant that he still had a way out. Since he could not escape or avoid the stellar source cyclone, he might as well not care about it anymore. Lu Yin looked at Jiu Yao and the other 2 half-ancestors, who had also completely given up on trying to escape. They allowed the statue to devour stellar source as they could not avoid it. Sensing Chu Yuan and Heluo Mavis's gazes, Lu Yin looked over. "Are you out of stellar source? How much do you have left?" Chu Yuan asked, as this was the first time he had ever been curious about Lu Yin. Even when Lu Yin had displayed the strength to fight against a Dao child, Chu Yuan had not been too curious. No matter how powerful this person was, as long as he appeared, he would definitely be the leader of an era. Heluo Mavis also looked at Lu Yin curiously. It was common knowledge that the Lu family's cultivation required a lot of stellar source and stellar source. This was the mighty power of time. The god of forgotten ruins looked outside in silence. She did not expect to come to the past. It seemed like the people here could not see them. Were they time travelers? The legends were true. The primogenitor had grasped the power of time and space, and had the ability to travel to the past and the future. No wonder the one true God wants to do so. The main hall shook violently once more. Everyone knew that every time the hall shook, it meant that there was a change. Sure enough, the next moment, the main hall reappeared in the dark space that seemed to have shuttled through space. At this point, everyone's expressions completely changed. This was not space but time. Was this what it meant to travel through time? Everyone fell silent. They did not know how to deal with the mighty power of time. Even an ancient progenitor like the god of forgotten ruins was the same. Do you know how to return? Heluo Mavis asked Chu Yuan. Lu Yin also looked at Chu Yuan. Only he and the god of forgotten ruins knew that there was a sword inside the statue. Both of them should have seen the primogenitor before. Chu Yuan's expression was solemn. I don't know. If you don't know, then who does? Heluo Mavis barked. Chu Yuan looked at her and then at Lu Yin. Although I don't know, I can try to control it. I need to get close to the statue. Heluo Mavis's gaze turned cold. You wanted to obtain the sword. Lu Yin frowned. Did Chu Yuan know? If he did, then he might be able to control the sword and bring them back. But if he did not know, then the sword was basically a gift to him, allowing him to control this power vessel that could travel to the past and the future. This power vessel was not something that Lu Yin had ever seen before, it was a primogenitor's item. How about it? Send me over and I can try to bring you back. Chu Yuan looked at Lu Yin. It doesn't matter if you don't want to. We're not from the same era anyway. Even if we travel to the past, it's still worth it. It's best if we can return to the era of the Above Sky sect. But what about you? The people you care about are all in your era. Even a progenitor might not be able to wait from the Above Sky sect until now. Heluo Mavis looked at Lu Yin. On the first floor of the main hall, Jiu Yao and Lan Xian looked at each other and then at Chu Yuan. They did not want to return to the era of the Above Sky sect, but now that they were traveling through the main hall, they should be returning to the past. Perhaps they really could return to the era of the Above Sky sect. In that era they did not have much status, and they could not even reach the level of the 12 Gate Masters. That was the golden age of the human race. Aside from the 3 realms and 6 Daos, there were also the top progenitors from the 9 mountains and 8 seas. There were also the ordinary progenitors, and below them were the 12 Gate Masters. In that era they did not have the right to speak. They definitely could not return to the era of the Above Sky sect. That person just now was one of the 9 mountains and 8 seas, Chu Yuan said solemnly. The 9 mountains and 8 seas assessment didn't take into account one's age, but rather one's ability. In other words, if this person could become one of the 9 mountains and 8 seas in the era of the above heaven, then he would definitely be one of the 9 mountains and 8 seas as well. Chu Yuan suddenly looked at Lu Yin. Have the 9 mountains and 8 seas been gathered in your era? Lu Yin seemed to have seen through his thoughts. Of course. Heluo Mavis's eyelids twitched. Even during the era of the above heaven, there had been times when the 9 mountains and 8 seas had been gathered. This was unbelievable. Their understanding of this era had changed. What about Desolate Ancestor? How is he? Lu Yin asked the god of Forgotten Ruins. The god of Forgotten Ruins thought about it. He should still be alive. He won't die anyway. I never fought with him because he's too difficult. Lu Yin relaxed. The Desolate Ancestor had killed his way into the Everlasting Tribe alone. In terms of spirit he was definitely not inferior to the Symbol Ancestor, but he kept a low profile. He was a nameless hero. At that moment, the astral source madly surged into everyone's bodies. Lu Yin hurriedly circulated his serious art and devoured the astral source, replenishing the 4 cyclones at an even faster rate than before. He became the center of attention once again. This time he absorbed all 4 astral origin cyclones until they were infinitesimally close to the second origin tribulation. Then he transferred the death chi to the astral origin cyclones, and the astral origin cyclones in the lower charge cyclones, middle finger cyclones, and upper intelligence cyclones, all of which were upgraded to the second origin tribulation at almost the same time as the one on the surface. Everyone else watched. A wolf head appeared above Lu Yin's head. This was the god of Forgotten Ruins' innate gift, but its power was not as exaggerated as when the god of Forgotten Ruins used it. This was just a guided origin tribulation. As he watched the wolf head approach, Lu Yin silently took out the egg and placed it on top of his head. The wolf head was then blocked by the egg and Lu Yin was completely unharmed. Everyone was speechless. Although a minor origin tribulation could be blocked by external items to a certain extent, Lu Yin was being too convenient. Jiu Yao said, if the astral source universe was normal, his actions would have attracted crazy revenge. Revenge? Lu Yin looked up at Jiu Yao. Who's taking revenge? Of course it's the astral source universe, Lan Xian replied as she looked at Lu Yin. A minor origin tribulation isn't that powerful, but most people rely on themselves to overcome it. They only use external items when they really can't overcome it. This is because there have been cases where an elder has dispelled a minor origin tribulation and attracted a terrifying origin tribulation, and it's happened more than once. As long as the origin tribulation changes, the person undergoing it will definitely die. Lu Yin recalled the lightning that had appeared at the end of the emissary origin tribulation. If not for that corpse he would have definitely died. This minor origin tribulation could change? Fortunately it hadn't changed this time. He put the egg away. However, the astral source continued to gather above his head, just like an origin tribulation. The others were shocked. A minor origin tribulation would only descend once. How could there be more? Lu Yin blinked. It couldn't be. Was it because he had 4 astral source cyclones that he could attract 4 origin tribulations? His expression turned ugly when he thought of this. No one could compare to him in terms of physical strength. Xing Kai's fist was caught by Lu Yin, and as Lu Yin tightened his grip, Xing Kai gritted his teeth, but he did not make a sound. His fist was about to be crushed. Lu Yin let go and Xing Kai retreated a few steps, panting heavily. The difference between them was too great. You're in the 10-man team that the 3 Ultimates Elysium is competing against the other Elysium, right? Sorry, but you can't go, Lu Yin said. Xing Kai lowered his arm. Aside from the methods from ancient times, the most important thing to cultivate battle force is one's spirit. It's true that our era has passed it down, but we lack a common method. He stared at Lu Yin. If you want to improve your battle force, you can only use your spirit. There are no shortcuts. Lu Yin's expression changed. I know. I want to cultivate the warring states period, but I've never thought of taking shortcuts. You can rest here. If you're bored, he pointed into the distance, there are many experts here. As long as you're not afraid of being beaten up, you can go and try. He then left Mount Supreme. When he returned to Sword Mountain, Lu Yin put Mount Supreme away. He had already taken on Xing Kai's appearance, and he didn't know what this identity would bring him. Sword Mountain was the furthest he had traveled in the 3 Ultimates Elysium, and he wanted to learn as much as he could from the members of Team E. If he was exposed, he would have to run, and he was confident that he could escape from them. Next, Lu Yin looked at the wooden house that he had previously assigned to Blackie. He stepped out and covered himself with 6-line battle force as he appeared above Sword Mountain. He then pressed down with a single palm, and with a loud bang, Lu Yin's palm crushed everything within 100 meters of the wooden house into powder. Even that small space was torn apart. The others all looked in the direction of the wooden house. A middle-aged man walked out of the void and looked at Lu Yin in shock. Captain Xing Kai, what are you doing? Lu Yin was indifferent. This person is a descendant of my enemy, so he must die. The middle-aged man was the only cultivator on Sword Mountain who had displayed rune lines comparable to a First Tribulation origin cultivator. He hadn't used battle force or a domain to reach this level, but rather spiritual force. He had come from the era of the Above Sky sect, and although he wasn't a member of Team E, he was still a wandering cultivator who specialized in spiritual force. Aside from the sect masters of the 12 gates, there were many other cultivators who had been sealed in ice, and he had been one of them. After hearing Xing Kai's words, the middle-aged man didn't pursue the matter any further. Since he's a descendant of your enemy, it's fine if he's killed, but don't act recklessly next time. At least make it clear that this kid has some talent since he passed the test. Xing Kai didn't reply and simply turned to leave.